Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for the Life Sciences Investor Forum. Our next presentation of the day is from United Health Products. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides, and you can view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Brian Tom. He's the Chief Executive Officer of United Health Products, which trades in the OTCQB venture market under the symbol UEEC. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here, and thank you, OTC, for hosting this event. We're very excited to be a part of it. And hello, everyone. Very pleased to have an opportunity to present our company in a bit more detail to this great audience. I'll kick things off with a quick administrative note. Some of the information that you're going to hear from me today kind of falls under the category of forward-looking statements under the SEC's definition, and so there's necessarily an element of uncertainty for that. So please treat it as such. As John mentioned, we are quoted on the OTCQB market. Our ticker is UEEC. We've been in our current form as a public company or a listed company since about 2010. Today, we have about 280 million shares outstanding on a diluted basis after converting some of our convertible notes. And so at the current market price, our valuation is somewhere between $20 and $25 million. We're fairly broadly held. We have about 400 shareholders of record. Most of those are individuals, and we trade about $10,000 to $15,000 per day on the QB market. Our primary product is in the category of a regenerated cellulose. Cellulose is very commonly used in the medical field and frankly throughout the economy. Regenerated cellulose and CMC in particular. Our product is found in things like eye drops. If you have lubricating eye drops, there's probably a CMC in there. And if you take your vitamins and supplements every day, the capsules that you ingest are also CMC. So it's a well-known compound that's been used and is found to be very, very safe. Our product is made in the form of a woven gauze, which we found to be very effective at blocking bleeding in the topical setting. We have an FDA 510K approval since 2013, and we have marketed our product historically into markets like emergency medicine, the veterinary markets, and the dental market with a high degree of success. We have more recently focused on getting access to what we think is a much more high value market, which is the human surgical market. And that's an area that, as you can imagine, has a much more rigorous approval process. We did conduct a study back in 2019 with a large patient population that I'll get into that showed that we had superiority to the standard of care, which is a product called Surgicel made by J&J in time to hemostasis. We're also excited that our hemostatic product can be produced not only in a woven gauze, but also in other formats such as the gel and the powder and the pressed gauze, which we've innovated. And those have shown to be very effective as well in our testing in animal models. We do have some intellectual property. We have a patent on our carboxymethylcellulose that expires towards the end of this decade. And as I'll talk about, IP is important, but in our view and with some evidence, we think that the FDA approval is much more valuable and creates a much higher barrier to entry. As it relates to the FDA, we are in the late stages of our application. I'll go through a timeline a little bit later, but we are sort of in the advanced stage of getting approval for the human surgical market. And we intend to go after other markets soon thereafter. We have a little bit of follow-up clinical work that they have requested that we do, which we're preparing to do right now. Once we do achieve that PMA, we will be looking for international certifications as well as follow-on approvals for other formats, and I'll get into why we think that is very important. As it relates to the shareholder value, we do not intend to be a very capital intensive company that has a lot of expenditures down the road to build out a sales force. We have a lot of companies that know us well, that are in the medical device field, and are very interested in our technology. So yeah, if and when it gets approved, we anticipate that we'll have the luxury of having commercial relationships where we won't have to invest in our own sales force. And that will allow us to drive a market rollout penetration faster. And as I mentioned, part of that strategy is getting as many of our products into the market as possible. We don't intend to stay around for a long time. As soon as we can prove the commercial success of our products, this company is best served and our shareholders are best served through an ultimate sale, and that is on our minds at all times. Just to explain the benefits of our product and how we see it being attractive to the surgical markets, I'll go over the results of our human trial. It was, as I say, back in 2019, 236 subjects, so rather large. These subjects were divided evenly between those who were treated with Cellustat and those who were treated with Ethicon's Surgicel Original. That's viewed as a standard of care. Surgicel has been around for over 60 years. It's well known to surgeons. And as you can see, we categorized our procedures into three categories: vascular procedures, thoracic, and abdominal. And in each of those categories, you can see that our time to hemostasis was considerably faster than the standard of care. I'm particularly pleased with the vascular category. As you can imagine, if you're trying to stop a bleeding event on an artery, you have a pulsating structure that is under positive pressure from blood pressure. And so those are the most challenging bleeds. And so our product stood up very well and managed to stop bleeding in that situation faster than the standard of care. On the bottom right table, you'll see a comparison of some of the attributes of our product versus Surgicel. As I mentioned, ours is a carboxymethylcellulose versus what's called an oxidized regenerated cellulose, or ORC. The primary difference between those two is the environment that they create when they're put into a liquid, including blood. Our product maintains a neutral pH level. So the body's pH generally is between 7 and 7.5. And so if you remember your chemistry, that's basically neutral. And we kind of keep the environment right around there. Because of the different chemical structure of Surgicel, their pH drops quite a bit into the acidic environments. pH as low as 3.5 to 4.5. And that causes a few different things. First, in terms of the appearance, when our product is applied to a bleeding environment, it converts very quickly to a gel from a white fabric. And that gel is somewhat translucent, so the surgeon can observe what's going on. Whereas with Surgicel, because of the acidity, what happens when it comes into contact with blood is it will essentially cause the rupturing of red blood cells. And the result is kind of a black, opaque look, which makes it more difficult for the surgeon to monitor the level or the progress towards hemostasis. Our product has a lower molecular mass on average. And what's meant by that is essentially the approximate average length of the glucose strands that make up the cellulose molecule. And as a result, it begins to dissolve in water or fluids much, much more quickly. So it's effectively gone in 24 hours. Our animal testing as part of our FDA application showed that there was really no evidence of our product left in tissue when it was sort of implanted in animals after a day or two. Surgicel, because it's more rigid, more structured, has a higher molecular mass, tends to stick around for a while. It can often last in solid form in the body for 1 to 2 weeks or even longer, which is fine. But there have been some reports in medical literature that can create problems. There's a couple of occasions where it was noted that after surgeries to remove tumors from a patient, the solid Surgicel, when it was looked at down the road, kind of 2-3 weeks, appeared as a sort of a mass in the body, and the surgeons were concerned that there may be some additional tumor material there. So that required further investigation. So it's less than ideal that it sticks around for that period of time. Surgicel often points out that the acidity in their product creates a low antibacterial environment, which I guess is logical. However, our view is that in today's surgical world, with the more sophisticated use of antibiotics in patients and with the more sterile operating environments than when Surgicel was introduced back in the 60s, the value of that is less pronounced. And in fact, there is some additional literature in the medical publications around studies that have very small studies that have shown the possibility of increased risk of infection when Surgicel is used. There's one in particular that studied the increased prevalence of post-operative infection in cardiac device implantations. The hospital group found that if they used Surgicel powder in this case, there was an increased incidence of infections, and so they actually ceased using it, and the infection levels went down. And a more important physiological attribute of our product that I think I'd like to discuss is how it affects the body's own clotting process. So our product and Surgicel are mechanical hemostats. There is no physical or so rather physiological or biological interaction with the body's tissue. We create a physical barrier that allows the blood flow to slow, and it creates kind of a scaffolding, if you will, for the coagulant process to proceed, which leads to a clot. An important part of the coagulation pathway that the body produces when it encounters a bleed, a wound, is thrombin. So thrombin is an important physiological orchestrator of steps in the coagulation process. And it has been shown that in a more acidic environment, the effects of thrombin is impaired. And so when someone uses Surgicel to stop bleeding, while it does create that physical barrier, it is also impairing the body's normal coagulation process. And so we postulate that may be one of the reasons why we achieved a more rapid hemostasis during this human trial that we did. Just to follow on that point on the appearance and the usability of the product, hopefully there's no one too squeamish viewing today, but so you have here two images of a liver abrasion. So this is a common bleeding sort of process in an animal model. On the left, you see the application of Cellustat. And as you can see, it stays kind of a reddish color. The surgeon can sort of see through what's going on, can evaluate whether there's still some blood flow or whether the blood flow has ceased. On the right side, you have the use of Surgicel. As you can see, the product turns black upon exposure to blood, and that makes it much more difficult for the surgeon to see what is truly going on. And in situations where our surgeons were using the product in the OR, they found this to be a very positive attribute. So we think it will help create demand for our product in the surgical market. I'll quickly talk about our competition and what we see as the challenges and obstacles to gaining market share if we are approved by the FDA. So over the years, Ethicon, which is the division of J&J that produces Surgicel, has built up a broad portfolio of Surgicel products. So starting with Surgicel Original many, many years ago in the bottom left corner, they have developed and market 3 different mechanical gauze products, Fibrillar, Nunit, and Snow, which are premium price products used for specific applications by surgeons who are looking for certain characteristics that will match what they want in the OR. And then back in 2018 or 19, the FDA approved Surgicel powder, which is again is the same cellulose product, but in a powdered form. And with this portfolio, Surgicel has managed to capture a very commanding market share, and they use a variety of discounting and bundling tactics that essentially motivate customers like hospital groups to maintain that level of usage for their products. Separate from the cellulose product is a very important category, which is the flowable or the gel category. In the US, Ethicon markets a product called Surgiflow. It competes with a Baxter product called FlowSeal. These are not cellulose-based. They are, in fact, made up of a different substance. But our product, because of its unique attributes, can be deployed in a gel format. And we think that gives us an entry into the very important gel market as well. And that'll help us capture market share. In terms of market share, these two charts show on the left the mechanical sector and on the right the gel or flowable market that I talked about. In blue on the left is the Surgicel family of products, and as you can see, they have over half the market. This data is from 2022, and we believe that Arista, which is another powder product, has been losing market share steadily to the Surgicel powder as well, so that market share tends to grow. Over half of the unit volumes, these are units here, are represented by Surgicel Original. But the revenue from the premium products sort of overwhelms Surgicel Original, so they generate most of their revenue from their more premium products. As a general example, average selling price for Surgicel Original is around $50, and Fibrillar, their most popular premium product, is more than triple that price. On the gel side, as you can see, there's basically a duopoly between Surgicel or Surgiflow rather, and FlowSeal. Both of these products are essentially a saline that is mixed with a gelatin product that's harvested from animals, either pigs or cows, and then it's mixed with thrombin to create a gel that has a very solid hemostatic effect. Our product can be made without the use of the animal byproducts, and so and we've seen in our animal models that it performs roughly the same as FlowSeal, which is the leading product. So we're very excited about that because obviously we can make our product more cheaply if we don't have to source those products, and there are some benefits to avoiding animal products in some patients for allergy reactions and the like. So we're quite excited about that. It's a very large market. In the US alone, we estimate that the market for both mechanical and flowable products in 2025 is pushing through $1 billion and growing at sort of mid-single digits every year, both in terms of volume growth and pricing inflation. And so we see a very important market in the flowable space that we definitely want to be able to access. And just to sort of give you an illustrative look at the market, this of course assumes that we do achieve our FDA approval for our mechanical product sometime in the next year and can tap the market in 2026. And then it assumes further that we can get a flowable product approved by the FDA perhaps a year after that so that we can tap the market in 2027. So if I look at the mechanical market volume, you see today in the middle of the screen in 2025, there's about 6.7 million units per year of these various mechanical products, be they Surgicel or other market participants, and that's growing to over 7 million units in 2028. If we are able to capture what I'll call a meaningful but single-digit market share by 2028, so we put in 9%, and our pricing is roughly similar to Surgicel, we believe that there's a revenue opportunity of about $35 million. Similarly, there's about 2.3 or 2.4 million units of flowable products sold in the US today, and that'll grow to 2.6 in 2027 and 2.7 in 2028. If we can tap that market with a mid-single digits market share, not, I think, terribly heroic given some of our attributes, then that would pencil out to close to $40 million of revenue. So in the aggregate, in this illustrative example, we hope to achieve $75 million of revenue by 2028. Historical M&A transactions in this sector for hemostatic products have tended to average between 4 and 7 times revenue as a valuation guideline. So if I just take simple math and apply a 5 times multiple to my $75 million of revenue, I have a valuation in excess of $350 million just for the US surgical market. With a market cap today of $25 million, you can see that that's a fairly positive upside to the stock price today. Beyond this, of course, we have international markets and some other applications outside of the human surgical space that we will continue to evaluate and pursue. Quickly on our FDA process. Going back to 2024 in the spring, we submitted a formal PMA application that included all of their extensive requirements. That summer, the FDA responded with a deficiencies list, as they typically do, and gave us some areas that they wanted us to clarify, correct, or supplement. In conjunction with that PMA review, the audit group within the FDA conducted a site audit of our California location where most of our surgical procedures were conducted, and they had no findings. And then they conducted a sponsor audit, which looks more at the kind of the paper trail and documentation and protocols. They identified 6 observations that were largely around protocol deviations. We responded to those as we're required to do in late October. In March of this year, they issued a warning letter, which is public, and it cited 5 violations for the clinical procedures of the 2019 study. They invite sponsors to respond quickly, as we did. So in April of this year, we submitted a formal response to the warning letter. As of today, we are still waiting for feedback from the audit group within the FDA on that response. In parallel with that, in order to address the FDA's request that we conduct some additional testing, we submitted an investigational device application, so that's an IDE. We proposed to test about 27 patients, most of those with our Celiostat product. The objective in that case was to look at the risk of rebleeding in the organ space, which was an area of particular interest of the FDA. The protocol is designed to be basically identical to our original study, and that would allow us to pool the results of the primary study and this follow-on study to add some statistical weight to our conclusions. Our ID application was disapproved in April of this year, and not because of the protocol or anything to do with the ID itself, but because there was this open warning letter that they asked that we address first. And so our efforts over the summer have been focused on finding a path forward to address this warning letter as quickly as we can. As I pointed out, it's been a bit frustrating because that department is slow to respond, but we do have interactions with the FDA scheduled for later this month. And so it's our hope that we'll be able to conduct the remaining human trial in the balance of this year and be able to be back in front of the FDA with a revised PMA application with all the deficiencies addressed sometime early in 2026. So in summary, and focus mainly on why we believe that the value proposition of this company is very attractive, particularly at the given valuation. That we've demonstrated that there is a value-added product that could be introduced to $1 billion market in the human surgical space. And we think that that's just as even more appealing when we look at the European, Canadian, and Asian markets, where products are very similar. We feel we've come an awful long way with our FDA pre-market approval process. Indeed, we've still got some work to do, but the lion's share of the work has been completed, reviewed by the FDA, and any deficiencies have been addressed. We have multiple commercial strategies that are available to us. So we do not intend to invest a lot of shareholder capital in a sales force. We have a variety of options to pursue both large commercial partners as well as smaller merger candidates that will get us into the market aggressively with a sales force at low cost. I mentioned IP. Yes, our patent does expire, but frankly, we see the Class 3 market approval as being much more valuable. The perfect example of that is Surgicel Original. It was the most popular product in the surgical space. It has been off patent for almost 40 years. and yet, because of its Class 3 designation, it's very difficult to dislodge it from the market. We have an asset-light production and commercial strategy. We produce our products through outside vendors, including for sterilization, for packaging, and so we don't need to develop an in-house manufacturing process. However, we could at a fairly low cost. And as I mentioned, our commercialization strategy will also be asset-light. And so there's no massive amount of dilution from future equity raising in the picture. Similarly, we are not a company that is developing a long product pipeline of new products. We are not investing heavily in R&D. We are very focused on optimizing the use of our existing technology, but we're not hiring dozens and dozens of chemists and engineers to identify new products. This is a company that has a very effective product that we think we can market very successfully, and we intend to exit through an M&A strategy as quickly as possible. Hopefully you found that. There's a few questions that have come up. I'll just kind of read them as I see here. And the first question is about the market itself. You know, what makes the Class 3 surgical market particularly attractive post FDA approval? I think the important thing is pricing. So today, we can market our gauze product, a little 4x4 gauze pad, for use in sort of veterinary applications or first responder applications, and it sells for about $5 a pack. And there's other competition with very similar cellulose products that are competing in that market. If we get FDA approval for the Class 3 market, that same product would sell for sort of $50 or $60 per pack. And so the margin goes from sort of 45, 50% to close to 90%. And that's something that's very, very appealing. In terms of the milestones that are left, so the question is, what are the remaining milestones for Cellustat to gain FDA approval and access the US market and the international market? So the US market, as you know, is governed by the FDA. We would say that even with some of the upgrades in the CE mark, European regulatory protocols, the FDA remains the gold standard for a rigorous review of new products and medical devices. And so if we are able to get through the FDA, then we believe that the path through the CE mark process is fairly straightforward. There won't be any additional work around the clinical studies or animal testing and the like to be done. It's just mostly the paperwork. So what's left in terms of milestones? Well, we have to get our IDE application approved so that we can continue with that last bit of clinical trials. That's something that we're working hard to achieve. It's been a bit of a frustration just given the slow movement of various parts of the FDA, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a bit unsettled at the moment, but we're optimistic that we're making progress. Once we have that, then we are standing ready to execute our clinical trial. We have our sites lined up. We have our physicians trained, and should be ready to go very quickly. So it should be a quick process to test. It's only 27 patients. And then with that done, all the other deficiencies have been addressed. And so we're quite confident that we'll be able to get things back into the FDA very quickly. Question on sales resources. Can you discuss your planned sales resources and channels? Go-to-market strategy, as I mentioned, will be largely outsourced, certainly in the US. We've been on the radar of large medical device companies who have a portfolio of existing operating room surgical devices, including hemostats. And many of them do not have something that can go up against the Ethicon juggernaut that has the massive market share. And so they're very eager to have our product in their toolkit so that their sales force can be more important to their customers. And so we anticipate that will give us a great opportunity to partner with them, both large ones and small ones. And it'll be just a matter of negotiating the best possible terms while allowing ourselves the freedom to sell the company, whether it's to our partner or somebody else, when we think it's appropriate. There was one question about a time frame with a lawsuit with the FDA. There is no lawsuit with the FDA. We have retained FDA counsel to give us guidance on how best to interact with them, but we do not intend to launch any kind of litigation against the U.S. federal government. We tend to pursue a more collaborative approach, and hopefully that'll play out. With that, we're up to 30 minutes, and so I'll end it here. For those of you who are interested in follow-on conversations, I invite you to join the one-on-one meetings, and this event and the playback will be available on the OTC website and with a link on our website for the next several weeks. Thank you very much for your patience and your attention today. We hope it was informative, and we look forward to further engagement.